Good evening, directors, staff, and members of the public listening. I will now call this March 9th, 2021 business meeting to order. We'll begin tonight by acknowledging that buildings within Minneapolis Public Schools are located on the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. Minnesota comes from the Dakota name for this region, Minnesota Makoche, translating to the land where the waters reflect the skies, or cloudy waters. MPS recognizes the original peoples of this place and are committed to make ongoing efforts to educate the community about the relationship that Dakota people have to this area, both historically and today, as they remain here in their home. Thank you. I also want to recognize this week marks the beginning of the trial for the man who killed Mr. George Floyd. And with the eyes of the world again on our city, educators are called once more to support our students through trauma, uncertainty, and fear, while simultaneously trying to process the impact for themselves. We watch with gratitude and astonishment for how our community finds ways to help our children navigate this difficult world. To our Black educators, I know the shameful truth is that this is not new for us. Time and time again, you've been asked to simultaneously experience and explain racism and white supremacy. I'm ashamed and sorry we must ask this of you once again. As we watch this trial, we seek and we hope for justice. Justice for George Floyd and justice for our nearly broken collective spirit. And yet we've seen for generations justice denied in a glaringly systemic and predictable way. We are committed to our students, and while we all want to promise to them and to ourselves that the truth will prevail and everything will be okay, the only promise we can keep right now is that we, Minneapolis Public Schools, will be there for you. It won't be perfect. We won't always have the words, but our promise is real. We're here in solidarity and will always be here for our children. Thank you. Due to the current local, state, and federal emergency declarations and guidance regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting of the Minneapolis Board of Education is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statute 13D.021, with some members participating remotely via electronic means. This meeting is being live streamed on our website and on Channel 15, and a recording will be available in both places. Before we begin, I'll note some legal and process expectations for both the board and the public listening. First, as required by law, we will take every vote by roll call. I will ask the clerk to call the roll by district order, followed by at-large members. Second, board members, please mute yourselves when not talking to avoid background noise. Third, during discussions, directors participating remotely, please use the raise your hand feature. I'll ask Vice Chair Arneson to process questions and comments from those in person. And finally, for the benefit of all of us, but in particular for our interpreters and those using closed captions, please remember to speak clearly, slowly, and into your microphone. Directors in person, please remember to turn on your microphone before speaking. Thank you. Director Arneson, will you please move approval of the agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second with last name for the record?
Second, Caprini.
Our agenda's been moved and seconded. If there's any discussion, please raise your hand to be recognized. Director Arneson, anyone on the floor?
No.
Okay. Seeing no hands, will the clerk please call the roll on the agenda?
Dr. Arneson.
Aye.
Dr. Ellamy.
Yes.
Dr. Ali.
Yes.
Director Surreal.
Yes.
Director Inns.
Yes.
Director Jordan.
Yes.
Director Caprini.
Aye.
Dr. Paul is yes. Chair Ellison.
Aye. That motion carries and we have an approved agenda. Director Pauly, will you please move approval of the minutes before us?
So moved.
May I have a second with last name for the record?
Second, Arneson.
The minutes as presented for the February 9th and February 23rd meetings have been moved and seconded. If there's any discussion, please raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no hands, will the clerk please call the roll on the minutes?
Director Arneson,
Aye.
Director Ellamy,
Yes.
Director Ali,
Yes.
Director Serio,
Yes.
Director Inns,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Director Caprini,
Aye.
Director Polly's yes, Chair Ellison.
Yes, thank you. That motion carries and the minutes have been adopted. Next, we will hear from members of the public. Like the past several months, public comments for tonight's meeting were accepted by voicemail. Messages will be played in the order they were received. I will now ask staff to play the public comments. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Fawn Bernhardt Norvell. I'm the mother of a Field middle school student and a high school student at Fair. Calling to urge you to consider an asynchronous day per week for kids to catch up and on their own time and safely connect with their teachers. So I hope that you'll consider that. Keep at least one day per week for kids to catch up and connect with their teachers. Thank you so much.
Gary Marvin Davison with the New Salem Educational Initiative, serving students whom you academically abused during the daytime. Extended comments may be found at newsalemeducation.blogspot.com. On the 18th of February, I had one of the many articles that I published in the Opinion Exchange in the Minneapolis, or rather the Star Tribune. In that article, I give a concise overview of the degradation of public education in Minnesota, showing the demise of No Child Left Behind, the embarrassment of the education establishment over lousy performances on the MCAs, including overhyped districts, Edina and Minnetonka, on a math test that Taiwan and Singapore would find laughable for lack of rigor, the fraudulent programs at the Minnesota Department of Education, world's best workforce, regional centers of excellence, the fact that the standards, social studies standards, were never covered in the Minneapolis public schools and most other districts in Minnesota. There was a comment about the quality of teaching in which teachers distribute boring worksheets, assign individual and group projects with little background information, and videos that go unexplained and undisclosed. This is what I know happens. My students record this time after time. If anybody in this room challenges me on any of these things, you get back to me, and you have a responsibility to do that. If you want to challenge me in a public forum on a debate, do that. But if you stare right into these facts and you acknowledge them, you better get to work. My book is circulating. People in a position to make a difference.
Hello, my name is Brianna Harder. I am a social studies teacher at Patrick Henry High School. This is my 22nd year in the district. And I want to express strongly, emphatically, that as we return at the secondary level, in particular, to in-person learning, it is absolutely critical that we keep our schedules the same, we keep our rosters the same, and we keep our flexible learning day the same. At Henry, we call our flexible learning day Wellness and Work Wednesday. We have one-to-one and small group meetings with students to help them get caught up and stay caught up. And we help to heal some of the trauma and wounds that this pandemic has created within our communities and our students and families through activities that are social emotional learning activities, community building activities, and self-care activities. The more disruption to the routines and relationships that we have established during this very challenging year, the more damaging and traumatizing school becomes for our students. And it has been already a very damaging and traumatizing school year. We need as much stability as possible. If MPS is really about meeting the needs of our students, we have an obligation to minimize instability and disruption to their learning experiences this year. Please keep our schedules the same, keep our rosters the same, and keep our flexible learning day the same. We will have so many teachers at the secondary level continuing to have to teach at least one distance learning class. We need to keep the same schedule for all involved. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Angie McCracken, and I'm the parent of a Minneapolis Public Schools high schooler at Roosevelt High School. I'm calling to ask you that you keep your schedules the same, keep rosters the same, and keep flexible learning days the same for our students once they return to in-person learning. I know that students will be both online and in person, and that it's really important for them to have consistency. Please consider this when you make your decisions about high school. Thank you. Have a good day.
Hello, my name is Carol Dahlman, and I am a teacher at Wellstone School, and I am calling to make sure that we have an asynchronous day, that we are not teaching lessons live, but that we can devote that time to student contact in office hours, to calling parents, and to follow up with students. And also important, we need that time to record lessons, because many of the students who are choosing distance learning are working asynchronously. They will not be tuning in at class time. They are doing lessons in the evening, on weekends, at odd hours, or perhaps when the baby is sleeping, because they are working and they are watching young children. I am concerned that the district may have plans to buy technology to facilitate hybrid instruction, but technology is only as good as the training. Teachers need time to learn it. It is more important that we prioritize the personal contacts that teachers can make in asynchronous time, instead of spending money on technology that we will not use next year. Thank you, and thank you for all that you do for Minneapolis families.
Hi, I am a student at Patrick Henry High School, and I really want to keep our work and wellness day because it really helps me with my mental health. And I just sometimes need a day off to work on my work that I haven't got to yet. It helps me be a better student and keep up with my classes. Thank you for listening to our voices and students and families.
Hi, my name is Olive. I go to Fair High School, and I'd like to keep one asynchronous day per week when we go back to in-person school. I'd like to keep my schedule, teachers, and I need that day to catch up. Thank you.
Hi, this is Kelsey Clark, a licensed school counselor at South High School in Minneapolis, and I'm just calling to share that even if we are in person, it is critical that we keep our schedules the same, as well as the class rosters, to ease the stress on both the students and the staff, as well as keep our flexible learning day the same. So please make sure that you've thought about all of these different things, because the more disruptions to the routines and relationships we have established, the more damaging and traumatizing school becomes for our students during these challenging times. If MPS is all about social emotional learning and meeting the needs of our students, we have an obligation to minimize instability and disruptions to their learning experiences this year. Thank you so much for your time.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Dulce de la Rosa. Tengo 4 niños en las escuelas públicas de Minneapolis. Y estuve el martes 2 de marzo en reunión del PAC. Hubo varias quejas de padres con una situación de que sus hijos están con diferentes grados en un mismo salón, con un mismo maestro. Es inaudito que esté pasando esto. Estuvieron los superintendentes asociados, la Sean Ray y Brian Zambrino. Desgraciadamente, como siempre, se lavaron las manos y dijeron que no sabían de esta situación. Necesito, por favor, que tomen cartas en el asunto porque es una situación muy mala para los niños de estos diferentes grados. Es injusto que los niños estén kinder, primero y segundo juntos en un mismo, con una misma maestra, puesto que no están aprendiendo adecuadamente. Por favor, denle seguimiento a esta situación. Y por cualquier detalle, mi nombre es Dulce de la Rosa. Gracias.
Hello, my name is Dulce de la Rosa. I have 4 kids at Minneapolis Public Schools. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, and I was part of the LPAC meeting this evening, and there were many complaints from parents stating their kids are being put together with other students from different grade levels in one classroom, and they're all being taught the same under one teacher. This should not be happening. Associate Superintendent Brian Zambrano and Lachelle Wright were part of this meeting, and they stated they didn't know anything about it. I need you to please take action. This is not acceptable. This should not be happening, and this is not fair that students from kindergarten, first grade, and second grade are being put together in one classroom with one teacher and being taught the same. Please follow up with this situation. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Again, my name is Dulce de la Rosa.
Hi, my name is Simone Pirati. I'm a sophomore at Washburn High School. And going back to in-person, it's really critical that we keep our schedules the same, the rosters of students the same, and keeping flexibility of learning during the day the same. We need to keep 2-hour block schedules, but we also need a work day on Wednesday. It's really, really critical that we do that because students need a break and so do staff. Teaching online and distance learning at the same time is really taxing to teachers, and it's taxing for students to be in a classroom for 2 hours at a time. In addition, the Derek Chauvin trial is coming up, and lots of students will be focused on that, and it's important that we keep that in mind. We're also in the middle of a global pandemic, so it's important that we also keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Chair Ellison, Board, Superintendent Graff. My name is David Weingartner. I am an MPS parent, and my call today is in support of the amendment to the legislative agenda for grant funding to provide MPS teachers with evidence-based professional development on foundational literacy. I would like to thank Director Ellamy for offering this amendment. Myself and Sarah Spafford Freeman testified in front of the Minnesota Senate and House Finance Education Committee in support of this bill. A consistent message we are hearing from educators is that their teacher education prep programs provided insufficient training on how to teach children how to read. We know, according to the ladder of reading, that roughly 40% of children learn how to read relatively easily, but for 60% of students, learning to read is a difficult process that requires a structured literacy program. What we are finding in our discussions with teachers, principals, literacy specialists, and advocates is that many of the components of structured literacy are missing from our core classroom instruction, our curriculum, and our interventions. We note that in MPS, the result for students that have not mastered foundational literacy skills in the earlier grades are extensive intervention costs, increased behavior and social emotional issues, early disengagement from school, which can result in lifetime struggles. The Minnesota Department of Education has piloted letters at 28 sites with 340 participants and supports this bipartisan bill. MDE Representative Dr. Amy Schulting testified and shared the testimonials of teachers indicating the significant impact the training has had on improving academic outcomes at the pilot sites. I would ask MPS Board to support our teachers and students by supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you to all those who took the time to share their perspectives with us. I will now turn it over to Superintendent Graff for any reports and recommendations. Superintendent Graff, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Chair Ellison, board directors, student representative Gebra Meskel, staff, and members of the public joining us this evening. Before I provide an update on our planning for secondary return to in-person learning, I want to take a moment to address three other issues that are top of mind for many in our school district and community. Last week, families began receiving their school choice placement letters generated after completing round one of our choice lotteries. And for new board directors in particular, I will share that annually this process can generate anxiety for those who did not get their first or second choice. And of course, this has been exacerbated this year by the implementation of our new comprehensive district design boundaries, and also the adopted placement policies and administrative procedures that were recently implemented. Our plan is to have a full discussion about comprehensive district design progress and enrollment at the Committee of Whole meeting on March 23rd. In the meantime, I just wanted to let you know that our student placement office is working with individual families who have concerns and questions, and Senior Officer Moore is working on the parameters for a second lottery, which is going to take place in April. The other thing I would say is that the comprehensive district design was created to encourage families to attend their community schools and make accessibility in those schools much more equitable. In the lottery process through which the school placements are made, all requests are assigned a priority, such as in area or out of area, sibling preference, employee preference, etc., and a unique random lottery number that puts them in order with their priority group. The outcome of this random process is not all students can be placed at their requested schools. The number of openings from grade to grade and school to school will vary greatly. And as I said, there are many nuances involved with placement, but we're seeing that despite the minor disruptions, the initial transition we anticipated as a result of the comprehensive district design is working. So look forward to sharing more of that information with the board and public at our Committee of the Whole meeting on the 23rd. Over the past few weeks, our country has seen a resurgence of hatred and violence directed at Asian Americans, linked in part to residual hate mongering from our former president and other national leaders, blaming Asian Americans for the spread of the coronavirus in the United States. And as a district, we do not condone any statement or actions that conflict with the district's values of equity and inclusion. The contributions of our diverse staff and student body makes us richer and more informed global citizens. Minneapolis Public Schools expressly condemns racist and xenophobic attacks being directed toward Asian Americans locally, nationally, or right here in our district. And when we receive reports that such language is being used in Minneapolis Public Schools, please know that we investigate these reports following our normal protocols and procedures. But to be clear, as an MPS school community, we stand united against all forms of bullying, hate speech, or microaggressions directed toward Asian American students, staff, families, and neighbors. And we will not let fear or misinformation about the COVID-19 virus separate us. I also want to thank Chair Ellison for her comments at the beginning of this meeting. You're all aware this week begins the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in the killing of Mr. George Floyd. And we know that the trial will have a profound impact on our entire school community. To support our staff, students, and families, staff in the offices of Equity, Safety, and Emergency Management, Black Student Achievement, and several others have collaborated to provide a wealth of resources designed to support, inform, and guide many of these difficult conversations that will be taking place. Over the coming days, weeks, these resources will continue to be updated on both our internal and public-facing websites. And additionally, Minneapolis Public Schools Director of Safety and Emergency Management Services, Jason Matlock, has been serving as our district liaison with city, county, and state government officials to ensure that we're prepared should the need arise for additional safety measures to be enacted. Because Minneapolis Public Schools has long held space for our secondary students to exercise their right to participate in local rallies and social justice marches, We have existing policies and guidance already in place. And finally, we're working with our partners to help ensure that students have additional trusted places in their communities to be supported over the coming weeks and months. At our last meeting, we gave board directors and the public a lengthy presentation on our planning to return secondary students to in-person learning beginning on April 12th. Additionally, we discussed having our students who receive level 3 or 4 special education service return for in-person instruction beginning on March 22nd. And since that meeting, we've made significant progress in our planning, and I want to provide just a few updates for all of you in the public this evening. As you're well aware, our goal has been to bring our secondary students back for in-person learning 5 days a week. And we've again emphasized that as a goal. That said, we've also communicated all along that there are a few caveats, and a final answer on what our return model will look like will be made later this week. As you're all aware, again, any return to in-person learning requires having an accurate count of how many students want to opt in and how many want to stay in distance learning. And as of today, we've received just over 12,500 out of 16,000 applications needed for students in grades 6 through 12. And the application process closes this evening. And of the 12,500 applications we received, about 53% of students are requesting in-person, with about 47% wanting to remain in distance learning. And again, the application process closes today. In addition to our student numbers, we also have to assess our staffing capacity, which is far more complicated at the secondary due to schedules and the licensure and because of the implications with graduation requirements. And so I think it's important to note that that has also impacted our timeline for when we have planned to return to in-person learning. I know some have said we've moved too slowly, others have said we've moved too quickly, but know that there's all these different considerations that we're having to make, and staffing is a big part of that. We are setting up our secondary classrooms now to determine, based on the governor's secondary guidance, which says that 3 feet of distancing must be maintained between students in the classroom. And so we're doing that with the consideration of our physical capacity and how that looks at each of our school sites. We're also working with our school leaders to think through scheduling. And as you heard from some of the public testimony this evening, we know that secondary teachers will most likely have to teach simultaneously in person and distance. Teachers working from a remote location will likely have both in-person and distance learners assigned to their classes. And of course, schools will have to secure a location within their building for in-person learners to receive the instruction from teachers working remotely. So for example, a class with only one teacher who's working remotely may have to be conducted fully via distance learning, with in-person students going to an alternative location, such as a gathering space like a media center, in order to log in for the virtual class, then resuming their daily in-person schedule. And then lastly, another factor that will impact our implementation is revised state guidance that we received last Friday on when and how we must provide teacher preparation time. We continue to work with the Deputy Commissioner on definitions of who should get the extra 30 minutes of preparation time, since most teachers will not be 100% in distance learning, which the prep time was designed for. So MPS has preparation time already built into the existing schedules based on our contract agreements, and we will follow all of the governor's directives. So again, you can see that this is quite complicated. We did have a great live session on Saturday where we were able to hear questions and answer lots of questions from parents and staff. And there were several concerns related to transportation. I also just want to add that tonight we've been working closely with the Metro Transit to ensure our high school students who want to get to school through public transportation are able to do so. And then lastly, what has brought us to this whole conversation is around our COVID infection rates. And we still continue to track and maintain key contacts with the city of Minneapolis and the health department of the state. This morning, I will update you and let you know that in the state of Minnesota, there are 473 positive cases for the state of Minnesota. Unfortunately, there were 6 additional deaths. There were no admissions to the ICU, and there was only 1 individual who was hospitalized in the state of Minnesota. Our city data, which we pay close attention to in the city of Minneapolis, we are at, from March 2nd, because of the week delay, we're at 14.1 cases per 10,000, which has been a very stable number for some time. So we've been hovering right around the just under 14 and right around 14 for some time. So that's very positive. I also recognize this is a lot of information, so I'd like to just provide a recap of the major takeaways. We are still collecting and analyzing data at this time. We have, again, signaled we'd like to do a 5-day model for our secondary students, but based on the information we're receiving and looking at all the complexity of things, we do believe we'll have to make a determination for what that instruction will look like this week. So look for some more information this week. And the schools and the district will plan to push out that information perhaps on Friday or Monday at the latest. And then, of course, we'll continue to work over the next few weeks to make sure all of our schools are ready to safely receive our staff and students. And barring any unforeseen turnaround in the city or the COVID county infection rates or change in the governor's guidance, we'll welcome our level 3 and level 4 special education students beginning on March 22nd. And then, of course, our students receiving regular instruction at the high school level beginning on April 12th. So that's a lot of information tonight. Again, thank you for your patience in allowing me to share that, and looking forward to sharing more information in the next few weeks, days, and at our next Committee of the Whole meeting. Thank you, Chair Ellison. That concludes my update.
Thank you, Superintendent. And thanks to everybody, all our staff who are working to support our students during this critical time. Our next item is a report from our Policy Committee. Director Polly, would you like to go ahead with the committee's report?
Thank you, Chair Ellison. For first reading tonight, the Policy Committee is bringing forward a number of proposed revisions, adoptions, and repeals, which represent the culmination of our extensive review of policies and protocols related to board organization and operation. After the committee spent last November and December reviewing this chapter of policies, we invited the full board to our January committee meeting to walk through a comprehensive proposal of cleanup, reorganization, and updating. This proposal was unanimously recommended last month by the committee, the Policy Committee, for the full board's consideration. A few highlights include new language on board social media use to ensure compliance with open meeting and data practices laws, the combining a few policies with related content for easier navigation, and codifying in policy the relevant items from the board protocols, so we have everything contained in policy rather than in 2 places. I'd like to thank my fellow committee members as well as other board members for their collaboration and feedback on this proposal. Ryan Strack has also done an unbelievable amount of work to get us where we are. Chair Ellison, that is our committee's report for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Polly, and thank you, Policy Committee members, for your work on this proposal. We will vote on these changes next month, but directors, are there any questions or comments on the Policy Committee report today? Director Arneson, I have no hands.
No, none here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, we will vote on these changes next month. Next, we're going to move into action items. We're going to vote on a few items, the consent agenda and 2 capital fund transfers. For the sake of those listening, I'll note again that this meeting is being conducted in part by electronic means, which means we must take every vote by roll call. Board members, please unmute yourselves and turn on your microphone when the clerk begins to call the roll so we can be as efficient as possible. Up first is approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes routine items that do not involve major policy, budget, or taxing decisions, bond awards, or items related to the superintendent's contract or evaluation. Director Caprini, will you please move approval of this item?
So moved.
May I have a second with last name for the record?
Ali, I second.
Thank you. Approval of the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. If there's any discussion, please raise your hand to be recognized.
We have one hand here. Chair Ellison, I'll call on Director Caprini.
Thank you.
Thank
Director
you.
Caprini?
Thank you, Chair Ellison. I just wanted to make a comment. I appreciate that Henry received the amazing capital improvements a couple of years ago, and I'm truly excited about the.
Just a point of order. Is this on the consent agenda? No, this is not. This is the next item, Director
Oh,
Caprini.
okay, I
if you wouldn't mind
apologize.
holding
I
your
got ahead of
comment.
myself.
No
All right,
problem.
thanks.
Not a problem. Any other questions, comments? Seeing no raised hands, will the clerk please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Director Arneson,
Aye.
Director Elamine,
Yes.
Director Ali,
Yes.
Director Cerrillo,
Yes.
Director Inns,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Director Caprini,
Aye.
Director Paul is a yes. Chair Ellison.
Yes, thank you. That motion carries and the consent agenda is approved. The next item is transfers of capital funds, which for the record, we will vote on separately. Both transfers were referred from the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee heard these and are forwarding this to the board. Director Caprini, will you please move approval of the first transfer labeled as Resolution 2021-17?
So moved.
Second, Polly.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. If there's any discussion, please raise your hand. Director Caprini, was this the transfer you'd like to speak on?
Yes, thank you, and I apologize for the interruption earlier. I just wanted to say I really appreciate all the capital improvements that have occurred at Henry over the last few years, and I truly am excited about the track being resurfaced, the repairs that are desperately needed. But I wanted to make a note that I believe Henry's athletic field is the only field without running water or restrooms. And my hope is that in the near distant future that Henry can actually get on the list to receive those much needed accommodations for their fans, just like all the other athletic fields here at Minneapolis Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Director Arneson?
None over here. Thank you.
Thank you. No more comments. Director Polly, will you please call the roll on this resolution?
Director Arneson,
Aye.
Director Elamine,
Yes.
Director Ali,
Yes.
Director Cerrillo,
Yes.
Director Inns,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Director Caprini,
Aye.
Director Paul is a yes. Chair Ellison.
Yes, thank you. That motion carries and the resolution is approved. Director Caprini, will you please move approval of the second transfer labeled as Resolution 2021-18?
So moved.
Second, Polly.
Thank you. The resolution authorizing the transfer of capital funds has been moved and seconded. If there's any discussion, please raise your hand to be recognized. Any on the floor, Director Arneson?
No.
Perfect. Seeing no raised hands, will the clerk please call the roll on this resolution?
Director Arneson,
Aye.
Director Elamine,
Yes.
Director Ali, Director Cerrillo,
Yes.
Director Inns,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Director Caprini,
Aye.
Director Paul is a yes. Chair Ellison.
Yes, thank you. That motion carries and the resolution is approved. We have two items under new business this evening, and we will start with a proposal from Director Ellamy to amend the 2021 legislative agenda. Director Ellamy, would you like to move your amendment so we can discuss?
Thank you, Chair Ellison. Tonight I move to amend the legislative agenda to add support for the funding of a state grant for training and the language essential for teachers of reading and spelling program under item 5.
Is there a second with last name for the record?
Second, Cerrillo.
Thank you. We have a motion that's been moved and seconded. If there's any discussion, please raise your hand. I'm sorry, Director ellamy, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you again, Chair Ellison. Again, this amendment would add our support for a bill that's currently making its way through the legislature. This would appropriate funding for grants for licensed teachers to complete the language essential for teachers of reading and spelling program. Given our focus on the literacy, this is an important effort that has been proved to be successful, and I believe it deserves our support. I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting this amendment. Thank you, Chair Ellison.
Thank you, Director ellamy, for bringing this forward. Directors, please raise your hand or let Director Arneson know if there's further discussion on this motion.
Chair Ellison, I'd like to call on Director Pauly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Ellison and Vice Chair Arneson. And thank you, Director ellamy, for your passion on literacy. As a board member who's spoken about literacy publicly and privately, probably more than anybody else, it's great to hear that. And as you and I have discussed, I share the need for urgency and focus on the topic. I will not, however, be supporting this particular amendment tonight. I do know this program fairly well, and I agree that it's effective. But amidst countless budgetary pressures, I do not agree that supporting a chance to apply for a grant with every other district in the state should be prioritized alongside our other established legislative agenda items, which I believe give us a better set of tools to positively impact literacy outcomes. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Pauly. Director Inns?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if Josh Downham is available to comment on our legislative agenda. And there he is. And with respect to this item, where it fits sort of at the Capitol right now, I understand it's for a specific vendor. It's a grant for a specific vendor that, or something to that. Anyway, Josh, if you could fill us in and give us some details about this particular item, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Superintendent, Director Inns, appreciate the question. And first I want to thank Director ellamy for her focus on literacy. I share her urgency in both at the higher education level in terms of training for teachers, but also at the district level so that we can really improve outcomes for all our students. This particular bill is, as the Director ellamy said, it is a grant proposal. I believe it's $1 million a year statewide that would be given to the department specifically for training through what's called letters. And that's, it's more of a phonics-based approach to teaching literacy, early literacy skills. You're gonna probably ask, I was joking actually with the superintendent earlier, you're gonna probably ask for a one-handed lobbyist. But the reason is, on one hand, I think we do, as a state, need to do a better job of training our teachers. And as a district, we have to do a better job of training our teachers. On the other hand, I don't necessarily think how this bill is constructed, the fact that it's actually naming a vendor, is the proper way to go about doing it. And I've spoken with advocates on behalf of this, and I express that same concern. I do believe if you're going to allocate $2 million, you should go through an RFP process. That's what the district does. That's what the state should do. And perhaps this particular organization would win that RFP. Setting that process issue aside, Director Inns, I think when we look at the state budget, we're hopeful that we'll get a reasonable size education target. On the House side, I'm not as I don't really have as rosy expectations for a budget target on the Senate side. And so I think there's going to be a pretty big battle that will likely last into June, unfortunately, to set a budget. And we always know there's too few resources for the need. So everything that comes up is going to have to come out of that pie, that size of the pie. There'll be different slivers. And my hope is that it's large enough that we can then meet many of the needs that Director Pauly mentioned. And so hopefully we can do some good things. But, you know, I'm going to give you that two-handed lobbyist thing. I think we do need to focus on literacy, but I also don't believe that how this bill is constructed is the best way to go about doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Downham. Any other questions, comments?
Chair Ellison, I'd like to, oh, were you, what did I see?
I do want to comment on
Okay,
a couple of
our
different
call on
things.
Director Ellamy.
So I guess I want to just come back to the table on our focus on literacy. And again, as a mother, my children have all attended Minneapolis public schools. We have for far too long continued to push our students through the system without giving them the adequate educational training that they need. And so I know firsthand in my home with my neighbors that our children are being pushed through the system without the basic fundings of reading. We cannot continue to operate in this way. I know that the $1 million is not a lot to start with, but I do know that this is a starting point for us. And this LETTERS program has been a pilot that's been adopted by the MDE. It has been adopted and it works in Mississippi. Mississippi is way further ahead of us here in Minneapolis. Our numbers when it comes to the literacy for our children have not increased in the last 10 years. We cannot continue to wait. So while I know this is not a large sum of money, I do know this will be a start. This will show our parents that we hear you and we are pushing to make the change that is needed within the education for our children. So at some point, we got to say, when do we jump ahead? When do we start this pilot to help our families that are screaming, that are continuing to be pushed behind the system? So I'm very passionate about this because, again, like I said, I've experienced it. I've seen my kindergartner get pushed through without the basic. I've seen my 8th grade grandson being read to from his teacher and not given the opportunity to show what he's comprehending and what he's doing. So at some point, I'm asking my colleagues, when do we put the urgency to say, we need to try this, we need to be willing to accept this as a pilot here in Minneapolis, and we need to give it a try. If not this $1 million that's on the table, what are we going to do? What are the plans? How are we going to address the literacy? How are we going to let our families know that we hear you, we are educating your children, and we will continue to put education first for our children within my community, my children that look like me, the black and brown children that are in my neighborhood, that are walking up and down my street, that can't read the instructions on a box, that can't read, you know, their homework that they're given the instructions, that we continue to push through the system. We cannot continue to wait. The time is now, the urgency is now. We cannot keep saying we don't have the dollars. We gotta find the dollars. And we have got to make a change for our families here in Minneapolis. Thank you.
Director Caprini.
Thank you, Vice Chair Arneson. Director Ellamy, I do share your passion, and for someone who made it all the way through K through 12th grade, undiagnosed with dyslexia, I share your concerns. My question is, this money, this grant, it's not, it's for the state of Minnesota, these grant dollars. So I guess am I assuming that if this did pass and you know, LETTERS was there for all, we could literally end up with maybe $250. And I guess because it's the state of Minnesota and not necessarily directed just at Minneapolis Public Schools. I just want to be clear, am I understanding that correctly? Thank you. Josh, could you answer that?
Yeah, Director Caprini, Madam Chair, Director Caprini, it is dollars that would go to the Department of Education, and they would re-grant those out to individual districts that apply. And so it would vary based on the size of the district or the number of districts requesting it. I don't believe there's, if I remember correctly, it's been a couple weeks since I've read the bill, but I don't believe there's any language around proration. So I think it would be almost like they would take a certain number of districts until that $1 million was exhausted. And then any other applying district would not get the dollars. So it would be, and they haven't released rubrics or anything like that. So I'm not sure exactly how the department would go about doing it, but it would go out to a certain number of districts until those dollars are exhausted.
So then the last thing that I want to say is, theoretically, we could end up with nothing.
Madam Chair, Director Caprini, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Chair Ellison, I have a comment, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. I think that with this issue at hand, I think any given session, there are a host of proposals that could impact MPS and other schools. And we pass a legislative agenda to prioritize and to focus. And that's the topic that's on the table right here, our legislative agenda. So almost if you look at our legislative agenda that we passed in January, almost every item on it, well over 3/4 of the items, is about funding, every single one. And it's collectively millions and millions of dollars. So for example, item 2 is all about special education funding and policy. And it's talking about the cost of special education and tuition billing. There's a $56 million gap in special education between what we spend on special education and what we are funded, that we subsidize out of other things. $22 million of that alone is for tuition billing, which means we're paying $22 million a year for special education costs for students who did not attend Minneapolis Public Schools. That's coming out of literacy, that's coming out of classrooms, that's coming out of other things that we likely deem more equally important, and it means that it comes out of our special education services as well. So I think there's value in reassessing our legislative agenda mid-session, particularly for major shifts or maybe just miscalculations on our part. And there can be good that comes from bills that come up throughout the session that support specific initiatives. So perhaps this is good. I share, Director Ellamy, your point that there is value in the legislature trying to address literacy through a very specific bill. Another example is there's a program called Black Men Teach that is getting some attention, and that's directly related to another part of our legislative agenda, which is about increasing the diversity of our teaching force. However, the purpose of a legislative agenda is to stay focused, and I think it is really important that we keep our legislative agenda focused on the much larger financial injustices for our district, that if we can stay focused on that, I think it's critical so that we can, no one else is doing that, or I shouldn't say no one else is doing it, but fewer people are doing that. And we have one person, Josh Downham, working on that. And so we do need, and we have a pretty long list that includes $56 million. And so I think we need to stay focused on that. And it doesn't mean that we're opposed to this bill, nor that we wouldn't celebrate if there was some focus on the literacy. But I think we do need to be clear that this $1 million will certainly come out of the $56 million or the $22 million that we currently are subsidizing. And should we recoup even a small portion of that, we as a school district can contract directly with this program or with other literacy initiatives. So, and I think the appropriate time, or a time to be talking about that, is during our budget process and our focus on literacy. So I think that our legislative agenda is focused and has the proper priorities with the larger ticket items. And I think that's where we need to keep our focus for now, rather than reacting to smaller smaller items, and I think that there are plenty of folks at the Capitol who can advocate and prioritize this $1 million item so that we can stay focused on the larger points of our legislative agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Arneson. Seeing no hands, I personally, as a mother of children who all went through Minneapolis public schools, and as a former teacher of alternative ed students, I know the importance of literacy for our children in our schools. And for me, this seems like such a small number of teachers that would be impacted. I would ask or support if the legislature wanted to invest money in our teacher prep programs so that all teachers knew how to teach our children how to read before they even became teachers and got a job in Minneapolis public schools. I think that would be a way to impact many more teachers that are in our district than this one little grant, $1 million in this grant money that we may or may not receive any money of. So I will not be supporting adding this to our legislative agenda. Any other discussion?
Director Ellamy.
If I can just make one more comment here. Again, I don't know if Maggie Sullivan is still with us. If she can, I understand from the higher ed and how we need to make sure that our teachers are receiving the training that they need. But again, the urgency that children that look like me, that's in my neighborhood, that's in my home, we cannot continue to wait. There needs to be an urgency. So if Josh can find those dollars, whatever we need to do, we need to let our parents know that we hear you, and we are going to do what's needed to make sure that our teachers are equipped to be able to teach our children the phonics that they need in order to read. So again, I totally support. I think that from a higher ed that it should happen, but we know that can take years, and that's every year there's a new class graduating, either from that kindergarten to that second grade to fifth grade, going into middle school, and then the high school, and then that senior year going into society. We need to put some urgency to the literacy of our children, and maybe Maggie Sullivan can speak to the training when it comes to our teachers and being hired, or I don't know if the superintendent or who one of them can address that for us.
Superintendent Graff.
Thank you, Chair.
Talk about literacy in our district, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Ellison. Also, thank you, Director Ellamy, for your willingness to have this conversation around what we need to do as a district. And I think that it's incumbent upon us as a collective group to prioritize that emphasis on literacy. And so I always ask, what should we be doing first? What can we do first? And I think the board has been very clear at the start of this calendar year to prioritize literacy and focus on that through our committee of the whole meetings. And so I think that is a significant first step that we have to do that as a district. The second thing that you'll hear, and probably in the coming months, is our literacy development plan and how we have professional development internally that we have to create for this very reason and this purpose, which is many of our educators who have been in the system for a long time have perhaps been through the different swings of how education supports reading and literacy itself. And so we have to come back and ground ourselves in that work and make sure that everyone understands the 5 elements of reading, which is phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. So all of those pieces are an important part of literacy overall, and you cannot just have one element of it, you have to have all of them. And so in that conversation, in that work, we know that we have to provide for some teachers more training around phonics and phonemic awareness, which is really the base foundation for literacy in the pre-K, kindergarten, first grades. To your point also about students who are in the 8th grade and are having to have people read to them because they don't have those foundational skills, it's essential that we have a support system in place to address and accelerate what those needs are for our kids. So in our budget, you will see again a prioritization and an emphasis around a multi-tiered systems of support. We cannot just have it be in one grade level and then assume after the kids, understand how to read that they're going to be able to, in the intermediate grades or in the secondary level, be able to take those skills and apply them to taking information in. So we have those same outcomes that you're talking about that we need, and there's an urgency there. The piece that I think is absent in this is one that I think we've all mentioned, and that is, what does the training look like at the post-secondary education? What does it look like in our universities? And so we've gone over the last couple of years to the prior to the pandemic, where we've actually held meetings in this room right here with our universities and said, these are what our students need in Minneapolis public schools. These are the type of training that we think our educators need. And it's about that cultural awareness. It's about the understanding that our students need to be recognized and acknowledged for who they are. It's about the literacy development, because what we're talking about here in Minneapolis public schools is not exclusive to Minneapolis public schools. It's a part of most large urban districts across the country where you have a challenge of getting staff to sustain in an organization or a district that has a higher turnover rate. And so we have to make sure that wherever our educators are coming from, they have those strong foundational skills of as I mentioned, the 5 elements of reading. So I would say that how we work with our universities, we've been very targeted with some of our universities, having very specific partnerships around training for special education, training for elementary. And so I think we just have to continue to raise up that need for the pre-service work that our teachers need. And I've shared, I think, publicly, or at least with a couple of board directors, when I received my degree back in the late 80s, it was around that time where people were debating, is it whole language where our students are going to pick up learning how to read by just having a book shared with them, or is it more around phonics? And as an educator myself, and coming from a family of educators, I knew the importance of the phonemic awareness and the phonics, and so I specifically had to pursue my own training through a different methodology to have those skills. So I think it is something that has come full circle once again, and it's more than just a conversation about literacy. It is about the training that we need at our universities, as well as the prioritization of this board and this district to make sure that our teachers have that available to them. So our professional development, the utilization of our resources that we have, the curriculum, and making sure that we are finding ways to monitor that. So it's not just a training and you're done, but how are we actually seeing that come to fruition in the classroom? So you've brought up, I think, something that many people are passionate about. As an elementary teacher, I know that the literacy is the bedrock of our learning, when we're talking about mathematics, science, social studies, everything else. So what I will share with you again is that as we present our professional development to the board around literacy, you'll see elements of what we're talking about embedded into that. You'll also see from our budget development and what we're prioritizing in our budget, you'll see that commitment as well. And it's not just over 1 year. We have to have this happen over several years, because to your point with that 8th grader who is not reading proficiently or not able to read proficiently, they're not going to get there over one night, over 1 year. It's going to take several years of consistent, intentional, specific supports from a classroom teacher, as well as the materials and resources of support staff. So I thank you for bringing it up, and certainly hear the commitment from other board members around the focus of literacy.
Thank you, Superintendent. Director Inns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Director Ellamy, for continuing to raise up the issue of literacy. As a social studies teacher and now a special education teacher myself, in the classroom, continuing to work with students, I see the importance in all aspects of academics for students to increase their literacy. I think, for us, obviously, that is a huge priority on this board. And any methodology for training teachers and teaching students that effectively increases the literacy of our students, I don't doubt for a second that our academic staff would bring that forward for us to consider and make a substantial part of our budget. Perhaps even more so with greater emphasis than I myself, even as a teacher, might have. I know that we're under a lot of pressure, political pressure at times because of our test scores. And so with that said, however, I don't believe that we should support grants at the state that may or may not go to our district. We're in a battle over there every year to get discretionary funds as much as we can to use in the way that we see fit for our students. And I don't doubt that literacy is a priority for us, as I said, but I'm not interested in advocating for grants for the state as a whole as a Minneapolis Public Schools board director. So I won't be supporting this amendment either. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Inns. I have no hands on my computer. Director Arneson, any hands on the floor?
No, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. Director Polly, can you please call the roll on this amendment?
Director Arneson.
No.
Director Ellamy.
Yes.
Director Ali.
Yes.
Director Cerrillo.
Yes.
Director Inns.
No.
Director Jordan.
No.
Director Caprini.
No.
Director Polly is a no. Chair Ellison.
No. Thank you. That motion fails, and the legislative agenda will not be amended. Next item, Director Arneson, would you please move the resolution to amend the board calendar?
Yes, thank you. I move to amend the board meeting calendar to change the date of the June regular business meeting from June 8th to June 15th at 5:30 p.m. to avoid any potential conflicts with graduation ceremonies.
Second, Polly.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adjust the date of our June business meeting. Director Arneson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. I would. We are still waiting final guidance from the state on graduation. I know the superintendent has mentioned that, and we aren't really able to finalize our plans until we get that guidance from the state. But I do want to preemptively move our meeting to avoid any potential conflicts during that second week in June. I know we actually currently have a graduation scheduled that night if our plans are able to proceed, and it's a likely week that graduation ceremonies will be held. I know regardless of the format, many board members typically attend graduations. Our superintendent attends every graduation, and we at minimally view the graduations. So this will help take the pressure off of already what's certain to be a busy week of evening meetings. There is typically a finance meeting scheduled the third week, but I've discussed this with Director Caprini, and certainly the Finance Committee does some heavy work leading up till June, and they wouldn't necessarily need to meet in June. So there should be far less conflicts if we do it this way. And it allows us the greatest flexibility, so our administration, as soon as they hear that word from the state, which we are really urging the state to offer that guidance, we don't want to be in the way. We don't want to be the reason that they need to wait, our staff, to make those final plans.
Thank you, Director Arneson, for thinking of our graduations and students. Any questions, comments? Any on the floor, Director Arneson?
No.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no raised hands, Director Polly, could you please call the roll on this this resolution?
Director Arneson.
Yes.
Director Ellamy.
Yes.
Director Ali.
Yes.
Director Cerrillo.
Yes.
Director Inns.
Yes.
Director Jordan.
Yes.
Director Caprini.
Aye.
Director Polly is a yes. Chair Ellison.
Yes, thank you. That motion passes, and our June meeting has been moved from the 8th until June 15th. So thank you, everybody. Last this evening is time for directors to give a brief update on the committee they chair or on any other board-related activities. Directors, please raise your hand or signal to Director Arneson if you would like to report this evening.
Director Pauly.
Thank you. Director Pauly, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. The Policy Committee will continue to meet before the committee of whole. So our next meeting will be March 23rd, and we'll continue on the process we've been doing. Thank you.
March 23rd. Thank you, Director Pauly. Student Rep. Gabromesco.
Hi. I just wanted to make an update on what I said before about office hours with students. I met with students at South High School and I've also talked with students on citywide general meeting and also their communications committee about some of the issues that students are currently facing and are currently anxious about this going back to school. And the majority of it was about, going back to school and the decision. So if students wanted to go from distance learning into regular learning after the decision period already ended, after kind of testing the water and seeing what in-person school was actually like, if there'd be a process for that. And also, if the scheduling and the asynchronous days would or would not be changed, depending, I know that very much depends on schools and it hasn't really been finalized yet, but that was a real concern for a lot of students.
Thank you. Director Inns. You're muted. Director.
Yeah, it's like when I'm teaching, exact same thing. Except for I could actually see the screen. I'm not projecting at the same time so that I can't see and then have to. Anyway, I wanted to apologize. I had a question earlier after the superintendent's presentation or comments, but I don't think you saw it, Madam Chair, or maybe you intentionally didn't want me to ask a question then. But I did want to just ask a question about school placement, if I could do that right now to the superintendent.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just, I know the school placement process is ongoing and it's different this year. I myself am trying to completely understand still the process a little bit. And I was just hoping that Superintendent Graff, when folks have questions about the results of their school placement or concerns about the school placement, where is the best place for folks to go to get those questions resolved? And how can they expect, what kind of resolutions can folks expect? Is it, within the next couple of weeks, months? If you could just comment concisely a little bit more on that, what is the best way for folks to deal with those issues? Aha!
Sure. I'll start briefly and just say that the best thing that families can do is, obviously, if you're able to stay connected through our website or through social media, communication as we push that out, please take a close look at that. If you are not able to, or you have specific questions, it is advisable to work with the school building leader. If that's still not something you're able to do because you're not sure actually where your home school is or what you're going to be doing with your transition between schools, then you can contact our Student Enrollment and Placement Office. And Martha Swanson is here, and I'll have her give specifics around the timing of that, because it does vary depending on the season or the specific request. But encourage people, if you can't get that support because you're not sure of your actual school, then reach out to our enrollment office, and I'll have her give not only our phone number, but the best time to reach out. So if you could please, Ms. Swanson, speak to that.
I wanted to give you a little bit of the timeline, the big picture. We do placements all year round. Families can always submit a request through our online system. They can call. We can do it for them if they can't get online or can't come in right now. We love for people to call us or email so that we don't have to have them in a situation that's uncomfortable if they don't want to come in. We do have a date that we aim for. We don't want to call it a deadline because we don't want people to think that if they don't submit a request by a magical date that they'll never get a school. We will always find everyone a school in our district who lives in our district. But we do, for budgeting and staffing allocations at schools, need to have a cutoff date where we say all the requests that come in by, this year it was February 7th, will be included in what we call the lottery, because we want to emphasize that it's a random and fair process. All those requests that come in will be processed for the lottery. They will get notification. In past years, it's not been till the end of March. This year, we've already moved things back 3 weeks because we know parents really want to hear their news with so much going on. So that process, that timeline moved back 3 weeks. Also new this year, we're having a second lottery, especially focused on magnet placements. So any requests that come in during this in-between time between the two lotteries will be set up to go through the second lottery and possibly get a spot at there. If we, going from there, then we'll be hand working or face-to-face working with families who didn't get a placement yet to make sure that we find something for them. Is there any other specific question that I can get to?
No, I don't want to. I mean, we could exhaust ourselves with specific questions and details. And I know that you are ready to answer those specific questions. I don't think this is the place necessarily to ask every specific question. But I did just want to give folks an opportunity. I know it's ongoing right now, and I think folks are experiencing a lot of anxiety. Things are different than they have been in the past. And, you know, even for us as board members who have been a part of this process for a long time, and we're a part of the comprehensive district design and the placement policies and the change of that, it's even confusing for us, I think, still. Although I would say that it is a simpler process. Objectively, the process now is simpler than it was previously for, you know, the previous decade. It's just different. So unfamiliar, I would say, not more complicated, but unfamiliar. So that I think is a lot of the confusion sometimes. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to clarify. That second lottery is specifically aimed at the magnet schools, though. It's not for, like, the first round was more about our community schools, and then the second round is more about the magnet schools. Is that fair to say? Correct. And it's not, do you want me to go ahead? Yeah, sure. Okay. It's not that nobody else will go through the lottery. Anyone who did not receive their first requested school in the first lottery will also automatically go through the second lottery. But we know that we have less wiggle room now going through the second time, as schools have been, as a lot of our planning for classroom sizes has been done. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you can't make like a blanket statement about community schools, because there may be some folks in some places where community schools might be a part of their second lottery choice anyway. But, it could be. Yeah. If somebody submits a request now for their community school, then we will work hard to get them into that school. Out of area requests are going to be tougher, that's all. Yeah, no, I guess what I meant was by community school, I meant out of area community schools, I guess, not just magnet schools that are out of area. Because I know for a lot of folks, like right now, and here I am belaboring the point already, but I know for a lot of folks right now, their kids are in out of area schools because of part of the magnet project. Like my kids, for example, and I'm not asking this about my kids, but my kids are in a magnet school that's no longer going to be a magnet school. So it's an out of area school. So I would say this year, right, that's a lot bigger deal than it may be next year or years moving forward, right? We had many more requests like that this year than in a normal year. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure you're very busy right now, and I appreciate all the hard work that everyone is doing to accommodate people's requests as much as possible and to communicate this new process effectively to people. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks for indulging me this evening.
Oh, thank you. And you're right, it's an incredibly busy time. We're working really hard. So thanks for grace.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Inns. Ryan Strack?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Ellison. I know it's unusual to ask to speak at this point, but I did want to acknowledge that a longtime partner of MPS, the City Elections Office Director, Grace Wacklerowitz, will be retiring at the end of this week. And not only has she served Minneapolis's renowned elections and being fair and accessible and have high voter turnout, she's also administered the MPS school board elections for the last about 10 years. So I know all of you have run in that time, so you've all worked with Grace, and I just wanted to acknowledge on the record our gratitude for all of her work supporting our elections. So congratulations, Grace. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and yes, congratulations, Grace, and enjoy retirement. Director Arneson, any hands in the assembly room?
Yes, thank you. Director Caprini.
Thank you, Vice Chair Arneson and Chair Ellison. I just wanted to remind folks that the Finance Committee will meet March 16th virtually, so I hope that the community will join us. Thank you.
Chair Ellison, I just would like to make my comments that Director Amin and I serve on the YCB, and we did meet this last month, and our organization is moving forward in changing the bylaws in the YCB. So we're exploring that process right now, and we'll be doing that over the next few months, changing kind of the structure of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Arneson. Any other board comments? Any other directors? See Ryan Strack's hand still up, but and I can't see everybody's hand in the assembly room. Director Ellamy.
Adriana has her hand. Right. No, Cirio.
Director Cirio has her hand up, Chair Ellison.
Director Cirio.
Yes, hi, good evening, Madam Chair. I have a couple of reports. I am the representative of the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, and we had a meeting this past Friday, and we had two primary items on the agenda. The first, we heard from guest speaker, House Education Policy Chair Representative Ruth Richardson, who provided an update on the session. And we also approved legislative session's priorities, including an amendment to prevent further deepening of special education funding gaps, as well as to create a plan to address it within 5 years. The rest of the priorities largely focus on the recovering from the impact of the pandemic. AMSD and nearly every other education organization is calling on the legislature to address several issues related to COVID-19 recovery that could impact our budget process prior to the spring recess, which begins on March 26th. So I will please encourage everyone to contact their state legislators. And also, our ELL caucus met a few weeks ago, and I was honored to be selected by my colleague, Director Ali, as the chair of the caucus. Director Ali, thank you for your vision and the ongoing commitment to work on this issue. I'm excited to partner with you and the other members of the caucus moving forward. During our meeting, we explored some possible ways that we can continue to raise awareness of the issues of our multilingual students and families, including collaborating with state legislatures to discuss funding and other issues. Chair Ellison and I met with House Education Finance Committee, Chair Jim Dabney, and also House Education Policy Committee, Vice Chair Hodan Hassan last week. Also Ryan Strack joined us, and also our lobbyist, Josh I'm sorry, it's really hard for me to speak with this mask. I'm very grateful to be representing, our families on this issue. And we have a follow-up meeting with Representative Hodan this coming Thursday. And I don't know if your Chair Ellison would like to fill in any blanks of any things that I missed.
No, I think that was very completely thorough, so thank you.
Thank you. And the last thing, I was invited to join a center group led by the Minnesota School Board Association. And the goal of this project is to gather statewide input from our school board members on the proposed constitutional amendment for our public schools. So I look forward to having this conversation with the board as this amendment moves forward in the state legislature. That's about it with my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no hands, I'll finish with my report. I attended the Tribal Nations Education Committee with the State Department of Education, where we discussed everything American Indian students, including advanced courses, attendance, our American Indian Department staff, in-person numbers, how many students are going to school in person, want to go in person versus distance learning still. Same day, Phillips Indian Educators, or PI, had their monthly meeting with Superintendent Graff. We learned PI is planning to have a May 28th, mostly virtual Mede Makaska celebration, their annual Mede Makaska celebration. They are still planning. Like I said, it's gonna be mostly virtual. So stay tuned, put it on your calendar for May 28th. Spring Break Academy. The first week in April, there will be an All-American Indian Spring Break Academy for students who are behind credits, high school students behind credits, American Indian students, American Indian teachers. If you want more information about that, please contact Jennifer Simon, American Indian Department Director. The Northside Achievement Zone met, and they are making plans to hopefully partner with the district during the summer months to help students who may have fallen behind or off track during this year in COVID. And so I think that's mostly an announcement for staff to be aware that Northside Achievement Zone may be contacting you to see what kind of supports they can do. I am still meeting weekly with colleagues from across the country at the Council of Great Cities Schools, where we discuss how we are, as districts, navigating the pandemic. We're discussing federal government funding with the CARES Act and the normal regular funding for education. And we started having a discussion about the federal government's desire to test students this spring. Just know that we are all aware of it, and we're talking about it nationally. I continue to meet monthly with the leaders of our other local governing boards, the parks, the cities, and the county. And please know that our hybrid meetings are by far the furthest any board has gotten in terms of meeting in person. All the other local governing boards are still meeting virtually. 100%. Nobody is doing any public opening of government where they're getting public comments in person, so that we're not behind on that. And lastly, under the Minnesota School Boards Association, there is a Minnesota School Boards Director of Color Fellowship, where we get together, all directors of color and Indigenous directors meet off and on during the year. And we had a meeting this past month with Attorney General Ellison, and we were given a Cruz Guzman update. Haven't heard that in a long time, but it sounds like they are coming to some resolution. The state is coming to some resolution around Cruz Guzman. We talked about the proposed amendment to the state constitution about public education, often referred to as the Page amendments. He also asked us to hold our children close to us during the Chopin trial. He told us that there are children who may be testifying during the trial and to please keep them in mind and support our children as we can. So that's the meetings that I've attended related to education. Any last comments?
Chair Ellison?
Yes.
Just from here from the floor, I heard Director Cerrillo. I just wanted to ask a clarifying. You made a report, Director Cerrillo, if you wouldn't mind, if I asked a follow-up question, that you are as a representative on the MSBA board, you've been asked to weigh in or provide some information on the constitutional amendment proposal. Did I hear that right? Did I hear your report right?
Yes, I didn't come to this to that group as a representative. I was just invited to come in and to be part of that conversation.
Maybe I don't understand, but you are our MSBA representative, but you're saying that this is a different part of MSBA, or can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, I mentioned, I shared this with Chair Emerson. I was a little bit confused, and given the fact that I'm new on all of this, I was not invited necessarily. I mean, I didn't see that in the email as a representative. So I will clarify that, and then I will report that in our next meeting, because I was a little bit confused. I actually got that invitation through my campaign email and not the...
I see. So there's some outside,
yes.
Okay. So there's some outside solicitation for opinions being asked. Okay. I just wanted to, if that's the case though, if you are we haven't taken a position as a board, and so certainly would welcome to put that on the agenda if you need us to take a position so that you can fulfill your, bring back your position as our MSBA rep. Be happy to discuss maybe putting that on the agenda in the future. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for the question as well.
Thank you. Can't see any other comments in the assembly room.
I think we're good here over here. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, Director Arneson, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I get a second with last name for the record?
Second, ellamy.
Thank you. A motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. Will Director Pauly please call the roll?
Director Arneson.
Aye.
Director Ellamy.
Yes.
Director Ali.
Yes.
Director Cerrillo.
Yes.
Director Inns.
Yes.
Director Jordan.
Yes.
Director Caprini.
Aye.
Director Pauly is yes. Chair Ellison.
Okay, that motion is approved and we are now adjourned. Good night, everybody. Thank you.